Welcome to our breakout panel. This is Blockchain Comes to Games. So I'm your moderator today. My name is Zhang. I'm the CEO and founder of Concept Art House. We're a proud sponsor of GamesBeat. And I'm also the partner at Fifth Era with your early stage investments and advisory work. And I have a great panel here with me today to talk to you guys about blockchain and games. So I'm gonna give everybody 20 seconds to introduce themselves. Miko?
Great. My name is Miko. I'm a general partner with Gumi Cryptos. Gumi is a Japan-based publicly traded game company, Final Fantasy and Brave Frontier, a couple other titles. And we have a crypto fund. So it's a pure play $30 million crypto venture capital fund based in San Francisco. So that's me.
All right. My name is Roy. I'm head of business for Tron Foundation, which is a top 10 blockchain projects in the world. We acquired BitTorrent for $140 million last year. And we also have a $100 million game fund called Tron Arcade.
Hi, I'm also Madrid. I represent Animoca Brands, which is a public company, $100 million market cap, based in Hong Kong, listed in Australia. And the company is now focusing on blockchain games. We just got Formula One IPs. We are working on a Minecraft-like games called The Sandbox. We're also investor in CryptoKitties and several other big blockchains projects.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Chou, CEO of Forte. Forte is a blockchain gaming engine that we're working with developers to help integrate blockchain technology into games. Previous to Forte, I founded a company called Kabam, where we started making Facebook games, and then we made mobile games. And we also have a fund where we're investing in, we're primarily looking to work with game developers that already have a game, that has a community, an existing community where there's trading and other activity going on, and looking to integrate blockchain technology into those games.
Thank you. And just show of hands, how many people saw Kevin's talk earlier today? Yeah, great. I've got a lot out of it. Kevin, I've known you for years. Maybe we just start off just with there. We learned a lot of things about Forte. I'd like to ask the panel for your reactions and thoughts on what Kevin had to say.
I think the most exciting takeaway I got from Kevin's talk is that blockchain technology has the potential to reorganize the economics of gaming itself, right? Which is, how do developers get paid to do their jobs for gaming, right? And the idea that all the emerging free-to-play concepts and all these other kind of patterns are actually dysfunctional, and they're broken, and they're not actually healthy. Totally. And so because the game industry isn't healthy, there's actually an opportunity for blockchain to help improve the flow of value. And so I think that's what I'd love this to be about, because I think there's a lot of side distractions. I'm wearing a CryptoKitties shirt, but there's a lot of ways to understand blockchain, but I'd love to really sink into that, right? So that stimulated me a lot.
Yeah, that's a great theme.
From my side, Kevin and I, we talk a lot. And for me, I was super excited to see Kevin, superstar in the industry, from traditional game industry, pivot into blockchain, which means it's a big milestone for blockchain space. Not just a blockchain project like Tron, we're trying to advocate and help developers, but also validated by industry veterans to show this huge market, a huge potential for this growth. And we're happy to work with Kevin, because this is such a big marketplace, and we welcome to work with all the developers coming to this field.
Yeah, I mean, what I love when you began talking about the 400 years of corporation systems that could be disrupted by blockchain technology. And the way we see games now and the level of engagements players are doing, it's like creating some kind of second reality. And this other reality could be managed in a very different way because of the blockchain technologies and so many aspects of it. So I was excited to see this more at the also philosophic or political ways as well.
Thank you.
Exciting time.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a great segue into impact of blockchain for me. Those of us that have been working in virtual worlds for the past 20 years, we understand premium currency, premium economy, subscription-based model like WoW. How is what's the impact of blockchain, and how is virtual assets and virtual currency backed on the blockchain different than what we understand today?
Well, I can get it started. So, I mean, right now, thanks to Apex, thanks to Fortnite, we can officially say current $100 billion of a game industry or game market is officially a free-to-play market, which is based on virtual goods, which has essentially no value. So now coming to, if you provide a tangible value onto blockchain, we can work together to make the industry $500 billion or even more. So that's how blockchain can help existing game industry and going forward.
Anyone else want to chime in on that? Blockchain impact?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's happening in blockchain is there's a huge potential energy. And the potential energy, if you go to CoinMarketCap and you just look at the value that's now being ensconced into the cryptocurrency world, the thing that's happening though is that there's lots of value, but there's not that much meaning, right? Which is, people talk about crypto economy.
Yeah.
Crypto economy. What is crypto economy? It's basically playing a game called Binance and losing money, right? Like, that's not a good economy. What's a good economy are in-game economies. If you want to find someone who knows how to design an economy, find someone who's designed a game. That's an economy. And so to me, what you have is you have power and you have meaning, right? So the game is engagement, it's meaning, and you have like power, and that's the interface to me.
I think one of the impact also is like to bring the power to people, like you hear that all the time when
Bring power to
blockchain, and becoming like moving the industry more like player-centric can add a lot of value, like a lot of, like people can spend much more money and giving much more value to the engagement they are doing. Like we don't value enough the engagement. They don't get enough reward from the engagement they do playing.
I want to pick up on the thread that Miko started, which was, how do we fix some of the broken elements of free-to-play? So free-to-play, I think I started making free-to-play games in 2008, 2009. And what started was this great idea of how do we get players into a game first and into an experience, and then have them, if they like that experience, pay for premium content in that experience afterwards, after they're engaged. But over 10 years, I think what's happened is that you can either get to a breakout success like Fortnite and do something like Battle Pass, where it's a very fair system, or you get to the I'll just say even the Kabam games that we made. We got to a point where we were constantly trying to figure out how do we balance this one player who's spending $10,000 in the game or more, with that player who's spent $5 in the game, with the player who spent nothing in the game but is spending 20 hours a week playing our game. How do we balance that? And it was just so hard. And ultimately, it devolves a little bit into pay to win, right? And I think it just feels over time like you're designing, for these players that can potentially spend a lot of money, and then everyone else in the game is just kind of some level of cannon fodder that that you're trying to make sure that they have an okay enough time to stick around. And it just feels bad. And I think and it's really not how our world actually works and how our real world economy works. And I think blockchain technology has the opportunity to really bring much more balance back into this. And how do we design gaming worlds and economies to be much more like a real world economy where people can invest their time, their energy, their engagement, or their creativity to do something and create value in a game that another player who still doesn't have as much time but has a lot more money can really pay for that value. So I think that's one of the things that I'm fascinated by. And then the other thing, of course, is then what that means is that how do you get the game developer and the players and the community to all be kind of on the same side of the table, as opposed to what free-to-play has felt like for me for a while, which is I'm sitting here designing a game, and then my players are sitting on the other side of the table facing me, and every time I'm making a decision, I'm trying to think, okay, do I take a little bit more of the pie, or do I give some of that pie back to the players, versus how do we grow the pie together, which is, I think, what some of the promise of blockchain technology enables for game design.
And I'd like to add to what Kevin is saying. So right now, for everyone on the seat, you're talking about game players, and your user base are essentially 100% players. Once it's on blockchain, you're essentially broaden the horizon, saying they could be engaged with as a player. They play the game as is. They enjoy the content. They can play the game as a collector. They can be as a farmer. It can be trader. The more roles in that, basically, they have all walks of life can engage in ecosystems. So that's broadened. It's not about game that people exist in the virtual world. For us, with the blockchain technology, with everybody else on the site today, we can make actually Ready Player One for real.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I really want to riff on what Kevin was saying about like the value of people's attention, right? Because if you actually look, I mean, I dare I say talk about Trump, right? But like we're in the age of attention economics, right? Like Trump was sitting in his office with like Jack Dorsey complaining that his Twitter followers were being decreased because of some evil that Twitter was doing to him, right? Like that was like yesterday. Right? The point I'm trying to make is that attention is valuable, right? And the thing that I think Satoshi Nakamoto designed is an aligned system of incentives that creates decentralization, right? So, the idea that people who are securing the network through compute power are actually being rewarded by the creation and minting of new Bitcoins is really the layer that I think is the most meaningful because that's actually gamification, right? Like the things that people don't understand is how beautifully gamified Bitcoin is, as an example. And I guess what I'm really driving at is I'm driving at that the people who can align everyone's incentives the best will actually win, right? And that the externalities of things like what you're describing are just friction that cause people to kind of suffer more and enjoy less. And so I think the winners of this game are going to be people who can align the value of what everyone brings.
So this is such a huge idea that we all are excited about and believe in. However, I'll ask you this. You can't really get through a blockchain panel on games without talking about CryptoKitties, yet I would ask the audience, how many of you actually own a CryptoKitty? All right, oh, great.
That's amazing. That's a
And how many of you played blockchain games? Wow. Okay, that's actually really wonderful. It's a great way to go into it. So CryptoKitties has about 500 daily active users, right? So what do we need to happen and what can we expect in the next like 3 to 4 years for blockchain to have more mass adoption? Is it the killer app? I know we heard a little bit about what Kevin was thinking, and we've also seen companies like BitGuild and Ultra and InGame promise this idea that you build this virtual sword that you fall in love with and you can take it into another game. Kevin shared some of his opinions on it. Can you guys talk about that a little bit? We'll start with Kevin.
Yeah. I think one of the primary things so I think there's a bunch of vectors that are necessary for widespread adoption. But one of the things that doesn't get talked about in this space enough is what is in it for the developer. I think starting there, I think in the gaming industry we like to talk about Waxcoin and some of Engine and Loom and some of these other things where it's like portability of like I own this asset, I want to bring it into another game. And I think that I love that world eventually, but I want to start with like we as the creators of these games who have teams of people that we're responsible for that are creating all the technology and art and storylines and experiences for these games. Like why would a developer start with integrating blockchain into their game besides like it's cool, right? But I think we need to make sure that it's all about incentive alignment. Why are developers incented to experiment with some of these game designs and technologies for peer-to-peer? A lot of times as game developers, we don't want people to be trading our items, right? I want to make a sword, for my game, and then I want to sell one to you, and one to you, and one to you, and one to you. And if you guys are trading all those swords with each other, then I can't sell as many swords, right? So what is in it for me as a developer to really experiment with this type of technology? I think we have to start, one of the things that we have to do is kind of start there and make sure we solve that problem.
I want to jump in on, you were talking about mass adoption, right? So we're looking for platforms, and some of the platforms are actually represented here on stage. So you have like XRP platform, Sirius, and Tron platform is Sirius, right? So those are technology platforms. But the question is, where are the users, right? That's the mass adoption question. But I got some users for you. Like what about like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, right? 2.5 billion monthly actives, those are users, right?
Well, if they can actually get onto blockchain.
Something like Telegram, 200 million plus, 300 million plus users, I forgot how many, but yesterday I was talking to the blockchain fund for Line. So Line is like Japan's messenger, and then Kakao has like Clayton and Groundex. They have their own blockchain project. What I'm trying to say is billions of messenger users will be crypto users in not that distant of a future. And I think that those users will play games, and the games will have tokens. So I think that that's part of that crazy cocktail is messenger users plus tech platforms plus games.
Well, messenger users are always a good use case. However, to roll out as a tens of millions DAU app is going to be very hard to roll out, right? And also, it's like how do you balance the economy, like a virtual currency versus existing cryptocurrency within the messaging app is always a very tricky thing. We hope that definitely we're super excited to see what you're saying, happening to Line, to Kakao, and other messaging apps to roll out. And also, that's partially the reason for Tron to acquire BitTorrent in the first place, to penetrate to the biggest decentralized ecosystem with over 100 million users. And to James' question, I think it's very doable. Within 2019, we can see first the app, that's a game running on blockchain with over 1 million daily active users. I'm pretty sure it's one of you guys sitting down here will provide.
Will we ever see a EA token or a Zynga token?
I'm pretty sure someone will create EA. Whether it's by EA or not, I'm not sure.
I think those companies will never catch up.
Okay,
I think
that's hard to hear from
they're
Miko.
not part. They're not part of this.
I think what we saw also the couple of months is some standards coming, like NFTs, like non-fungible tokens. I also want to be sure here we make a distinction between a token as a cryptocurrency or non-fungible token, which is also a token. So if you ask me, I believe some of those companies like Ubisoft may offer some virtual asset, moving them as NFTs. And what NFT brings to players, real ownership, their capacity to be able to trade it, and all and be able to use it on other games,
Non-fungible token.
Interoperability. So I think the biggest issue is which kind of new experience we can. I a little bit disagree with the developer's approach. I say more about what can you do after CryptoKitty, which was so boring in terms of play, in terms of game. Sorry, but and I think those standards are built now, and I think non-fungible token is one of it. And I think players needs to be more involved and
Okay.
And I think it's always difficult to balance between speculation and fun, and I think speculation and fun, it's probably the two sides.
You're a big believer in the non-fungible token.
Big believer in NFTs even in a technology point of view. I think the smart contract that those blockchain developers are doing to build a different kind of way of copyright, of ownership, with or without IPs.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So for me, non-fungible token is awesome, right? It provides the tangible value for the asset. But end of the day, what's the motivation behind the token? What's the motivation behind collecting? Is it collecting the end of a user flow, or is it something beyond collecting? Is so to serve the desire or demand? That's something we need to, for every game developer, publisher, you need to think through. What's the actual use case for that? So for me, collecting is definitely not the end of it. And that's also explained the reason why at the early days of CryptoKitty that so many people rushed for it. Definitely not just for collecting a random kitty, right? That's definitely on the table.
Yeah, so go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on.
Yeah, so I'm wearing a CryptoKitty shirt, so I like all of it. But what I want to say is this: is if you want to come up with a way of reasoning about non-fungible tokens, you can just think that they're non-fun. Right, which is, really the thing that's really interesting to think about is that the non-fungible token, it definitely exploits an intrinsic property. And the intrinsic property is what's created in a blockchain is this scarcity, digital scarcity, right? So the idea that you cannot copy the thing means that you have the thing. Now the question becomes, is that interesting? Collection's interesting. I think display is interesting. Vanity is interesting. It's like getting a tattoo. It's like, hey, look at me, I have the original thing.
NFTs have attributes attached. The question is I think what was wrong till now is how you attach attributes on those NFTs, and that's where the interoperability of those NFTs
Yeah, I mean,
come from. Go ahead, sorry.
We had a discussion around kind of attributes and attribute extension across game environments of non-fungible tokens, which is basically this concept of if this sword is powerful in this game, is it also powerful in the other game, right? To some extent, what we're talking about is we're talking about the codification in software of the extent of an essentially IP license. Right, which is that as an item moves from one game into another, what are the rules that govern what it's allowed to do in this other environment, right? So that's all interesting. But the reason why I'm kind of willing to punch is that I don't think anyone in this room should care about that stuff for the next 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah, even for the pure collection perspective, the Rage of Bahamas and all the card games, you can collect in the virtual goods as of now already. Why do you need an NFT to collect? What's the point to go through the whole hassle just to collect, right?
The reason why I'm poking hard here is that, like, I really want to get to the foundations of what is a blockchain. Like, what is blockchain, right? So to me, blockchain is a new form of history. It's basically a consensus history. So basically, these nodes that don't trust each other are able to agree that this is actually literally what happened. What's interesting about a non-fungible token is that it's on-chain. So what it means is that, like, it's actually something you can reliably say either happened or didn't happen, right? So you either got the thing or you didn't get the thing, and it's basically like a token circulation that's capped at a single token. Right?
Which is, by the end of the day, is adding additional economy layer given it's on-chain.
So I get the excitement, and the reason why I get the excitement is yes, non-fungible tokens are a fundamental concept that emerges that can be exploiting the underlying technology itself. But the reason why I'm kind of skeptical about the amount of time we allocate here is that I don't think non-fungible tokens are going to transform the game industry. I think they're going to be a cool feature of the game industry. I think what's going to transform the industry. He's got $100 million for you guys to, like, build games, right? He's got $100 million for you guys to build games. You know, I got $30 million.
So a couple different viewpoints here. Fungible versus non-fungible.
So non-fungible tokens, like we all have non-fungible tokens that we're willing to trade for, you know, your equity.
So let's talk about tokens for a second. So, you know, so everybody knows Bitcoin and Ethereum, and there's over 2,000 different tokens out there, right? So those of you who are building games, I'll probably start with you on this one, Roy. So is there a certain token that our audience should consider building their game platform?
Big softball.
I mean,
well, you get 30 seconds.
Sure. I mean, Tron is the platform, faster and cheaper, more scalable than anybody else on the market. For fact that for the last month, we can see on Tron, let's say started with someone else. EOS has 40 new dApps across the month time. During the same time, Ethereum has about 70 dApps across the month time. Tron has 110. That's the growth rate we're hitting right here. And also, we have the fund, we have ecosystem for partners to help our developers to scale, to monetize, to basically to establish their footprint into the early blockchain space.
So there's a lot of history between Tron and Ethereum that you guys can Google and read about. And so let me follow up on that though, and then I do want the other panels to chime in. So if our developer does choose to go with Tron as a platform, what kind of support can they expect? Is there any kind of community support, promotional support? And then if so, is that still make it a decentralized token?
I always say this is two things. Number one, for starter, definitely a lot of support from Tron ecosystem. First of all, Tron ecosystem arguably have the biggest community in the whole blockchain side. We have over 8 million social community. On top of that, we have through BitTorrent, we have 25 million DAU, 100 million MAU, and by the end of Q2, we probably will have over 100 million DAU across our portfolio. So that's, in any sense, traditional or blockchain sense, is a big volume to support. Developers care about two things: where can I make money, and how can I get traffic? I mean, I can now help you make money because you guys are expert of making your game successful, but we can help you to penetrate, to get users, to get exposures. That's what we're good at.
Anybody else care to weigh in on EOS or Ethereum as a token?
I don't know what they're doing.
So, I'm willing to kind of step up and, just put in a good word for EOS. I think we're going to see Brock, if you look at LA, and Brock has been a part of this scene for like many years. I live in Northern California. I call this whole blockchain community the Brock chain down here. And EOS is like a big, deep part of it. So I just want to put in a plug and say, hey, it's a legit chain, and and it has performance. And obviously
There's starting to be some games on it.
And obviously, full respect to Tron and XRP. So.
I just want to be clear that XRP is not trying to be they're not trying to be a smart contract platform yet. They care about kind of settlement between different assets and currencies as their focus around gaming, and not that they expect games to be built right on top of their protocol. I kind of think we're probably going to be in a world in the next 1 to 3 years where there's going to be multiple chains. So depending on your game design, if you're trying to have an economy where, let's take EVE Online, where the most valuable ships or other assets are trading for thousands of dollars. I know I see the MLB Champions guys in here, where you guys have assets on the chain that are tens of thousands of US dollars worth. You're going to want to secure that onto a very high trust, high security chain. And then there's going to be other game designs where you have millions of users maybe, and they're all earning something that's maybe a fraction of a penny for some time spent on something, and they're going to want a different chain with different security, transaction speed, finality, sort of characteristics. And I think we're going to be in that world for the next 1 to 3 years. And I'm not smart enough to figure out which chain's going to win in the long run, but certainly today there's options for developers, and I think that's great. And so we're not Forte. We're not trying to be a consensus layer and figure out all the proof of work, proof of stake stuff, or whatever validators and our and how hardware works together. We're trying to say we understand game developers because we've made a lot of games. How do we make this technology of what is an NFT? Like game developers, we don't talk about what an NFT is. We talk about we're trying to create this type of game item, and we're trying to create this type of behavior in the game. So what Forte is trying to do is kind of be the bridge and say, how do we help game developers understand this technology and not get into the guts of the technology, but just focus on creating a great game experience. And we're going to try to help you, build that game and leverage the power of blockchain to create peer-to-peer game designs and allow your players to be trading and having fun and combining things together in a real community, and help interpret is Tron the best thing? Is Ethereum, is EOS, et cetera. And I think different game developers are going to make different design choices that require different underlying platforms.
What kind of games can we expect to see in the next 2? Are we going to see a Candy Crush of blockchain? Are we going to see a Fortnite?
Can I poke out here? So to me, I feel like that may be an overemphasis, right? In the sense of people are blockchain gaming. In 5 years, we're going to just say gaming, right? We don't say TCP IP gaming, that's not a thing, right? It doesn't matter. It's not interesting. And to me, the distinction that I was hearing that's interesting between these two mindsets of Tron and XRP is the notion of DApps, right? And so I just want to kind of make sure everyone in the audience has that distinction, which is a DApp is basically code that's executing in the framework of a so-called smart contract, right? So it's basically running on-chain. It's a decentralized application, right? And to me, I'm not sure DApps are a thing.
Let me clarify. I mean, what are we saying is actually not two different things? Because whether it's a smart contract based or not, essentially, what do we see on so many games where we're talking to? Hybrid model is definitely the way to go. I agree with you in to say a DApp. Is that going to be 100% DApp? This is early on, in the J2ME world, if you guys understand, you can play online games. No, there's no such a thing down the road. When there's more adoption and when faster network comes up,
it won't really matter. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's going to be a mix. It's going to be a fusion.
Yeah, but the reason why I'm interested in this is that when you're running a smart contract, what's happening is that the code execution is happening inside of consensus. Right? So what it means is that your code execution is suffering a penalty. It's actually slowing down. And so, gamers are oh, wow, this game is slow. Bye-bye, right? So so I go back to Nick Szabo, who's a creator of smart contracts, and he basically says a smart contract is a vending machine. And if you look at a vending machine, it's either taking in money or value, and it's dispensing some value. If your code is either taking in value or dispensing value, put it in a smart contract. But if it's not doing those things, then why bother, right? So to me, I don't think gaming should be about dApps. I think it should be about apps. And I think that, you know, what Kevin was saying about kind of we want to deal with monetary systems and we also want to deal with things like funding, like that's interesting.
At where we are today then, in the next year or so, what genre of dApps or in gaming is best on the blockchain?
For me, I believe like metaverse is definitely like this kind of like game. You cannot, when you ask about like Candy Crush was a great like tapping experience, frenetic for mobile, like quick session. If you think about how to really use this technology, and I get back to what you said at the beginning of the 400 years cooperation system, like you need to have some gameplay that also like being like player centric with a lot of assets, probably like multi-device with different like with a marketplace. Like I don't think like any gameplay or any game general just like can beneficiate with this technology. I think like more like what you said about like Ready Player One. Like it's how like frustrated it can be for players not to be able to play with his own avatar on every game. Only this very simple concept that for me it's very stupid. Like I want to be able to play every game with myself, and it's not happening. And when I say every game, it's not Candy Crush. I don't care to play with my avatar on Candy Crush. So like so I go with metaverse, probably gambling and all this like pool games. You know, like when you got like challenging each other. Like definitely blockchain can really help making people challenge each other and make money.
You mean like peer-to-peer competitive experiences?
Yeah, exactly. And probably TCG, and like as we see, I think that's my answer. Like those three genders, at least for the next 2 years, gonna.
For me, there are four different genres. One is game of chance. Next is game over skills. And third is simulation. And four is strategy. But all in all, you can see these four genres have one thing in common. They touch economy. It's not necessarily 100% about narrative. Narrative just helps you get the theme, get the context of it. End of the day, it's about economy. And the economy we're saying here is not necessarily like with traditional gaming economy, which is in a sandbox itself. What are we talking about? Open economy. What if you have this item, like we can open it up to the secondary market and how it's gonna go afterwards. But that is what's exciting about the whole thing.
Yeah, so I think I want to underscore basically the core points of like in-game economy. So it's anything with an in-game economy. I think the other piece that's really important is massively multiplayer. And massively multiplayer is just the creation of markets, right? Because you need markets. Like if you have like a unique in-game item, like what's the enjoyment factor? The enjoyment factor is you get to walk around and show everyone that you have it, right? I mean, it sounds crass, but that's kind of what it is, right? So I feel like, to me, you know, the more people there are, the more meaning there is, and the more kind of like, so I think massively multiplayer with in-game economy, I think, is probably the sweet spot for the title that will work.
Yeah, I like to look at things, I like to look at actions and behaviors that already happen. And so that's why I agree with, you know, MMOs. It was, you know, going all the way back to the Ultima Online days where, you know, people would be trying to, you know, the items that people had were so valuable that, you know, people would try to show up at EA's office and try to like figure out how to game the system, or people would, you know, people would buy and sell things with each other, or accounts back then, you know, to World of Warcraft and that, you know, so any game where there's some sort of, you know, some item economy and people want to, you know, trade and exchange those items in value. I mean, that's kind of where Bitcoin was, right? Bitcoin was about how do you create exchange of value without having to have a bank or a government or any other entity sort of sit in the middle and guarantee that transaction. And I think that's what's happening in games, right? For a long time, it was players wanted to change things in a game, but game developers could say, well, I don't want that to happen because I don't want to design for that type of economic activity. And I think what blockchain enables is how do you get game developers and players to both be in the same boat of designing peer-to-peer transactions that create value for everyone? And I think that's kind of this new world that we're living in.
Can I add something about also like one new disruption we saw is like how players create content like over like games like Roblox or Minecraft. So all this user-generated content revolution, let's say, and how players like you don't need to be a top developer like to do a game now, and I think the blockchain also like can be very beneficial like to again make those creators get the right value, not just playing but creating content.
Yeah. I mean, I think the magic moment for a player comes when I have something in a game and I sell it to another player. And it doesn't need to be like I made money. It could be like a car, like I bought this thing for $10 and I sold it for $7, but I used it for like 3 months and I had a great time with this thing, but I want to buy the next thing now and I want to sell this thing for $7. Or of course, it's the time where you sell it, you bought it for 10 and you sold it for $12 and you're like super happy that you made $2 on that thing. That magic, I think, if the game is designed to facilitate that and the player has that type of experience, I think the light bulb goes on, oh, I own this thing, right? And then the question is, can you only do it in the game? Or can you really do it on, there's a gaming forum where all this, where players are already hanging out. I post something on that game forum where I own this item and I want to, anybody interested in this item. And
look
somebody
no
can buy and sell it in that forum, right? Like that is, I think, where the magic happens for players. And I think that's the aha moment, I think, for like CryptoKitties, right? It's like this idea that I really own this thing and I could buy it and I could sell it. There wasn't much to do with the CryptoKitties besides collect it, but I think when you apply that into the context of some of the games that we're creating, in this room of like what happens when you really own that asset in the game, I think that's magic for players. And then the key question for me is like, how do we make sure that developers are also, incented to create these types of experiences for players?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's look no further than Magic the Gathering. I remember high school playing Magic, collecting all my cards, selling it to my friend for $40, and years later, no, like 1 year later, the Black Lotus became whatever it was worth. He told me I made $2,000 on that box. Okay, let's talk about how to get started in the space a little bit, because I noticed that Kevin, you announced your fund with Ripple, $100 million. We know Tron has a development fund for $100 million. I believe Animoca has a fund.
Yeah.
And Miko, he has his Gumi crypto.
Yeah, 30.
So if they were to, what are the criterias and what do you guys look for? Is it the same as VC or slightly different? Are you guys looking more at projects or taking a stake in it, or you guys
very quickly? I think we look at the money, like how the project gonna make money. Like I think like usually when you look at a project, you can look at the team, the creativity, specifically in gaming. But here it's gonna be like very money oriented, like all the token economy and how the blockchain games approach the business model. It's something that we want to be really understood by the team. Sometimes you go like, you see those mobile games, like it looks really cool, very creative, and then like you're like a publisher. So
I'll start with, thank you for that. And then I know, by the way, Miko has a great blog that he can tell you about, but he has, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, for what we look for is, I'm really inspired by these crazy crypto arbitrage traders, right? Because they're really looking to exploit kind of scarcity, right? They're looking for kind of what's common and what's scarce, right? So to me, the thing that's actually scarce are like great game experiences, right? Like, I hate to say it to like people who have these chains, but like, technical blockchains that have high performance are actually a commodity, and they're going to increasingly be a commodity. What we actually want is and I think that I don't want to denigrate that technical achievement, and I also want to say that these are the smartest chains because they're pursuing gamers, right? Because what you're really seeing is that the scarcity is really good games, because they're the most engaging things, they're the most attractive things, so to me, like, the natural connection between the technology platforms and their power, and then the kind of engagement and attention that a game can create, that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for that magic cocktail. Now, in terms of investment opportunities, Gumi as a game company knows where the bodies are buried, because we buried like 1,000 of them out by Vegas and hit them in the head with a shovel, So like, we don't love lots of game titles because we're scared, right? Because we think most of them will die. But like, we are looking for things like App Store, wallet, platform. We're looking for kind of components that may fit into this broader ecosystem. But again, we're not shy of investing in a title if it's like got traction and some juice, you know.
Yeah, for us, Tron Arcade, we're not particularly looking at the game as just to a short-term financial return. What we're looking at is a vertical number brand with the existing community, with existing followers, with existing economy, and tokenize that onto the ecosystem. That's how we put it. And through our ecosystem with our users, and we essentially try to build a kind of iOS or Android-like ecosystem through which we try to accelerate to help developers to get as many users as possible. So that's how we look at it, not necessarily from a financial return, but in terms of the whole ecosystem perspective.
Yeah, our fund is set up a little bit differently because our vision was about creating a world where games adopt blockchain technology and create these unique peer-to-peer, enable peer-to-peer transactions in games. And I think Ripple just really believed in that. So they have a broader sort of mandate of driving blockchain adoption, not necessarily on XRP. They do have other things like Interledger and a few other things that are very critical and rely on XRP as a settlement layer. But anyway, my point is that we're solely focused at Forte about, we don't take any equity, we don't take any governance or anything else. We're solely focused on helping to drive blockchain adoption in the gaming space. And so we can think about our fund as an opportunity cost fund. So meaning that if you have a game, new game, existing game, you could be spending, I know because I've run lots of game teams, you could be making your Android app better. You could be hooking up that next marketing thing that you got to do to get some more users in, or you got to fix those bugs that are obviously always there. So we think about our fund as how do we help make a developer whole for the time that they would invest on like trying this new crazy blockchain peer-to-peer thing, and help with the opportunity cost of not doing something else. So that's kind of how we think about our fund. And then of course when all of the things that we're building are all the plumbing and things to help make it so that a game developer with the tools that we're all used to using, how do we add blockchain into a game as simple as kind of how one would use Unity to design the front end for a game.
Thank you, Kevin. I think we could actually go on for another 30 minutes on this at least. But why don't we turn it over for some questions from the audience? Does anybody have a question for our panel? Taylor?
What I really resonate with you, the conversation about that is that as a developer, whenever I hear about like blockchain, is that like what is the use case that I can use, and then like you said, like, why do I want my item to be sold on secondary market, and at the same time, if I design a game that can be sold onto the secondary market, why do I use blockchain for that? I can just do the like backend myself, and then allow that to be sold as a secondary market, right? I can be the arbitrator myself. So what would be the like the real thing that in that scenario the blockchain can offer to the developer?
I think if you actually try to design it yourself, you could. You could do it in a central database, of course. But you would always need to be a party to that transaction in a way that, and I would also argue that the amount of time for you to recreate basically what blockchain already does for you out of the box would take a lot of time and effort to do versus over time it being much simpler process to use blockchain. So for example, if you're trying to design something in Clash Royale where somebody can trade one of the skins that they bought or something like that, how do you push that out onto the edges, like where the community is already at, as opposed to that type of transaction always needing to happen within what you're doing, and then thinking about things like liquidity and all the scam, or like how do you create trust in a transaction if one user wants to says, hey, I have this legendary skin, do you want to buy it? Then they don't actually have that legendary skin. Like blockchain basically makes all of that so much more simple in terms of just eliminating counterparty risk, like eliminating a need for escrow, eliminating a need for any trusted party to be in the middle of any transaction.
Isn't it more of the like chicken and egg situation here, like similar to like Stadia, what Stadia is going through, like how, I mean, the mass adoption of blockchain didn't happen as of yet. Like, why do I need to believe that your blockchain will be around next 3 years when I'm done with developing my game? Right?
Yeah.
So how do you answer that?
Sorry, what's the question? I can.
Yeah,
You trust on, so that you talk about the trust that blockchain provide. So as a developer, the key question actually is that why do I believe in blockchain?
yeah. Okay. Well, I think part of it is, so this is why we believe in a multi-chain sort of world. If you're really interested as a developer to make sure that this blockchain is going to be around, 10 years from now, that may lead you to a certain type of choice in terms of use of a blockchain. And so we're not trying to make a blockchain. We're just trying to make developers understand what all the different blockchains enable. And if you want to say, hey, I want a blockchain that I know because you're like, I want Clash Royale to be around for another 20 years or whatever, you probably want to have a much more decentralized, blockchain to do that, right? So I think the power of, if you look at the amount of compute power that's on Bitcoin, that's on Ethereum, it's been growing year over year for a long time, and the overall trust of kind of how those systems are set up for an ecosystem to continue developing around it is, it's a pretty fascinating thing, and I think most likely my argument is that Bitcoin is going to, I forget the law, but it's been around for 10 years. I think it's going to be around for a lot more than 10 years because of the way the ecosystem is set up.
Also, when you're picking up what blockchain to work with, think about what progress that blockchain has been making. There are a lot of blockchains in the world. What matters is that the blockchain project actually being delivering on time to the milestone and make benefit and contribute to the overall ecosystem, right? That's what matters, and that's how when you're deciding which chain or cross-chain, whatever solution you're working with, is something to think about.
All right, guys, I think we're at time now. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Miko. Everyone, let's give our panelists a great round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.